Welcome to the Steering Change podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Hello friends, and welcome to today's episode of Steering Change. We have a special one for you today. We recorded this live on April 22nd at the Grey Eagle Event Center, where we held our 88th annual conference. We are coming at you with a panel today. We have Leading with Safety, how top carriers build cultures that prevent claims and drive results. And we were lucky enough to be joined by moderator Laura Lunt, who is a board director with AMTA. And Laura was joined by Matt Cook with Aero Transportation, Kyle Pouliot with Caneda, and Jeff Rosnau with Whitecourt Transport. Let's take it away.
All right, thanks everyone for coming today. It's great to see a large crowd. I'm so pleased today to share with you, to be able to moderate this panel with three individuals. So I'd like to invite Kyle, we've got Jeff, and we have Matt. So I'll do a really brief introduction, but as was introduced, I've seen really firsthand how safety is really a proxy, I call it, for a well-run business. And so I'd just like to acknowledge that all three panelists today come from organizations where this is actually demonstrated. So the businesses that they're representing have all been recognized with Trucking HR Canada as top fleet employers. So I'm excited to be able to introduce each of them, and so congratulations to those organizations they represent in getting that most recent award. So the perspective of the panelists today should really be able to give everyone, even if you're not a carrier, a kind of an overall understanding of things you can practically take back to your business in terms of safety and improving your safety culture. So first I'm going to introduce Kyle. So you want to wave? There's Kyle. His picture's above your head as well. So Kyle Pouliot, thank you. He's with Caneda Transportation. In his capacity of Director of Operations at Caneda, Kyle oversees a company distinguished by a 4-decade history as a preferred carrier for cross-border, less-than-truckload shipments. With more than 27 years of experience in the transportation sector, Kyle has fostered a culture that prioritizes safety and operational excellence. This is accomplished through development and empowerment of Caneda's personnel, an unwavering commitment to continuous process improvement, and a steadfast dedication to maintaining the highest safety standards. This pursuit of excellence was recently acknowledged at the national level as Caneda Transportation received the Northbridge Insurance National Safety Award for 2025, surpassing more than 400 competing Canadian fleets. And Jeff will wave. There's Jeff. So Jeff is the owner and CEO of Whitecourt Transportation. Jeff leads a company with an 80-year legacy as a premier freight carrier and bulk transportation service provider to Alberta's oil and gas and forest products industries. With over 30 years of leadership experience, Jeff has cultivated a powerful, people-first culture that is centered around mentoring and empowering the team. Guided by core values of culture, leadership, integrity, collaboration, kindness, and sustainability, his strategy involves equipping his people with industry's best equipment and fleet management tools to get results. This dual focus on people and performance has solidified Whitecourt Transport's position as a recognized industry leader. This commitment to excellence was recently recognized nationally by Trucking HR Canada, honored Whitecourt Transport with the award of Top Medium Fleet in 2025. And finally, Matt. So Matt is with Aero Transportation Systems. Matt is the Director of HSE and Risk at Aero. He joined Aero in 2007, first managing one of Aero's trucking divisions until 2013 before transitioning to the HSE side of the business. In 2018, Matt assumed leadership of Aero's HSE and risk portfolio. Over that time, Aero has achieved record lows in injury rates and claim costs, supported by stronger incident learning, practical risk controls, and sustained involvement from frontline teams and supervisors. Matt is known for translating regulatory and insurer expectations into simple, field-ready practices that improve performance without adding unnecessary complexity. Thank you to all three of you for joining today. I'm going to get started. I'm going to throw this one at Matt. How do you define a safety-first culture in your organization, and what does it look like in practice, not just on paper?
Well, first of all, it doesn't start with, goal zero posters and all these kind of things. I think intrinsically inside you, it's good to have these, aims and goals within a company that zero incidents. But where it really starts it starts with leadership. It starts with the exec. It starts at the top. But it's also with safety leaders that you have within your company. That could be division managers, drivers, driver mentors, supervisors. They're given the power to when something's going sideways, etc., is stop work, make decisions. It's not about following an SOP to the last letter, because we all know that when that happens at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of January, there's probably something going wrong. So really, it's about that message about giving people the power to change what they need to change at the time, and also there's no fear of retribution as well. You've got to get away from blaming the person. It's not who screwed up. It's okay, where is the system screwed up? About fixing the system.
Great. I like that point around SOPs, because so often there's two things that happen. We create a procedure for something, and then we try to find someone to blame. So it's about creating that empowerment. Yeah. Jeff, anything what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no, I'll kind of parrot what you're saying. I think that it's about empowering people, and like we heard in the presentation before, it's establishing some level of trust with your people. You can't really have a safety culture unless you have a real people-first culture. And for us, it's just trying to give people the tools that they need and make enough time to listen to what their feedback is, to make it safe for them to give that kind of feedback. A culture is really like social safety, right? So if you have to establish that baseline, and it involves a whole bunch of other things before you get down to safety, because I think that safety programs can be a little bit clinical, and it's full of acronyms and words and maybe things people don't understand. We just try to really simplify it so everybody understands what we're doing, and as long as they share the same values as us, the rest looks after itself.
So great. So it's a values-first culture. So you find that the values that you have here, you maybe just talk a little bit about the values that you have and how you see that demonstrated in the safety culture. So you've got a list of values. So maybe just give an example of that if you could.
Yeah. So like in the list that you read there, leadership is one, and you talked about that. So empowering your leaders, and we think there's leaders at every level of our organization, from the driver and the mechanics, the supervisors. And if you can create an environment where they can get together and actually start to lean in and feel some kind of connection or camaraderie with each other, and have some understanding. I always say I would like everybody to be able to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes first. That's hard to do, but you need to try and create opportunities for them to have a shared experience. So we do little things. It's like maybe you get people involved at the ground level by getting them into your health and wellness committee, or some way for them to feel like they're a part of something, and then they can build up from there. And then you kind of build rungs on that ladder, and eventually they'll be on your joint health and safety committee, and they'll be making contributions. And as long as it's a two-way street and they feel like their voice is being heard, they start to feel like they're a part of something. And that's when you've really made some headway.
Great, thanks. Kyle, what would you like to add to that?
It's really, they kind of covered it
all.
I would just emphasize that it is a two-way street with safety. The subject matter experts are the employees and the drivers. A lot of safety programs tend to be top-down focused, where you're just dictating, and you're not going to create a culture with that. You got to listen to the people who are doing the jobs and what the reality of what they're facing really is, and try to work with them. And then, they're invested in the program and they want to see it improve as well, because it affects them directly at that point. There's a lot more buy-in. So two-way street definitely will help create that culture.
That's great. I really like the idea of creating those intentional moments for people to come together. It creates that, what we just heard about, respect, right? So that's great. All right, next question is, what role does executive leadership play in shaping safety behaviors across all levels of the company? So I think we talked a little bit, this is more of a grounds up, but what role in safety do the executives have? So I don't know who would like to take this one first.
I'll start.
Kyle will start? All right, thanks.
For the executive, I think you really need to be where the work is. everybody at all levels of the organization, they pay more attention than you're thinking. They notice everything. So the standard that you're willing to overlook is the standard that you're willing to accept within your safety program. So it starts at the top, and I do, for example, I'm part of the Health and Safety Committee. I join that. I throw myself on the on-call safety rotation. The drivers are quite surprised when they call and they get the director. They say, oh no, they apologize. I have a flat tire, I'm so sorry. But, they appreciate that you're there for them. And then, there's budgeting concerns. You got to spend the money on safety. It's not free, but if it were free, it wouldn't be a value. So you gotta walk the walk and talk the talk.
That's great. I remember the first time when I was went out on one of our road construction crews, and I remember one of our leaders treated me just like everyone else. I had to do an FLRA, right? He's like, we need to do an FLRA. I'm like, good. I want to do an FLRA, right? You want to be right there being seen as you're doing all the things and living in their shoes. So that's great. Thank you. Matt?
Leadership, they set the tones and the priorities. Whether they know it or whether they want to, they do. If that's a good leader or a bad leader. One of the things that we do at Arrow, within our 6 main business units, we have a monthly safety call with the divisions in each business unit across North America, and everyone from VP down is on those safety calls, and so that's really showing that leadership is engaged. And they also, it took time. It did take time. I'll give some of the guys that, but even the VPs, they are asking the questions in the calls. They're not just sitting there mute. So it sends a message to, doesn't matter if you're a supervisor in Dallas, Texas, a dispatcher in Dallas, Texas, or something like that. You realize, this is important to them, because you always hear that safety is number one, and no, making money is number one. Number two, joined into that, is safety. Like safety, if you've got safety embedded from leadership down, then you'll make money. You'll have strong production. You'll have strong operations. But that comes from the top. And it's like I said earlier on about having those safety leaders throughout your business, whether, like Jeff, whether a mechanic can be a safety leader. It doesn't have to be somebody who's management. It can be anybody within the company, but they get that from the top.
That's great. Jeff?
Yeah, I'll say something about that. I like what you say about how they'll notice. Like, they will notice if you're there and if you're not there. And if you're inconsistent, like she was talking about, consistency is key. So if they see, the rules don't evenly apply, that's a big deal. And they also like to, we try to make it very clear that it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes a mistake. It's just not okay to not learn from the mistake. And so I'm coming here just on the heels of a big safety meeting that we had, a spring breakup meeting, and we had everybody on Sunday came and feed them all breakfast and talk about things. And we opened that meeting with our leadership all giving their own story, one of their stories of a big accident or mistake or something that they had done, to show that each one of us have had a mistake in our past, and I impressed on everybody that they needed to really show what they learned from that. So ideally, a good safety program is where we can learn from each other, right? So if you don't have to learn everything firsthand, that's a good safety program. So that's what we're trying to get the leaders to show up first and to admit they're human, and then model the right behavior.
Great. So it's all about sharing, it's about consistency, and it's about showing up. Great. All right. The next question I have is, how do you keep safety from becoming a compliance checkbox and instead make it a core business value? Who wants to take this one first?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah. Well, first off, compliance is not a goal. Compliance is the flaw, and from there, it's everything is excellence. And if you're starting from fresh, or if you've even not started from fresh, if you're trying to improve the safety culture within a business so it's more than just a checkbox, it's not a quick solution. If you've got 3 guys working for your company, it can be really quick. It can be done in a day. It can be done in a week. But when you've got over 1,000 employees and over 50 operations, it takes a lot of time. In our case, it probably took Arrow 7 years to actually shift our culture from where we were to where we kind of wanted to be. And we run SOPs. That's the classic. I can when I moved from opera, I was in operations, so I should know that we had a health and safety manual. But here's the reality of it. It was 1,000 pages that sat in a binder on a shelf, or kept the door open, or kept the door closed, one of the two. And one of the first things that, when I took over the leadership of the safety side, was you've got to get away from these 1,000-page, sometimes pre-made safety programs, and you take it, you get rid of that SOP that's 6-7 pages long. You turn it into something that's much shorter. It involves the employees at every level, and that's how you get away from just being compliance, just being checking a box, and actually turn it into something that's meaningful. That now today, most of our employees don't even think about. Like it's ingrained. Like they know what to do. They know they know their role and everything. It's muscle memory. So you've got to make an effort. And the bigger your company, the more of an effort and the more financial, input it might take. But everyone has to start somewhere.
Great. Who's Jeff?
Yeah, I could speak sort of on behalf of the smaller carriers in the room. I think that they're a little bit of a disadvantage when you're a smaller company. You don't have the resources. So you can fall into the trap of going through all the compliance work because there's an infinite amount of it. And after you've completed all that and you don't have a very huge team to complete it, you feel like you're safe. I mean, we've had our core certificate for 30 years. AMTA has been our certifying partner. And I would think that there was a point in the past where we would think, we're safe. We've checked all the boxes. The audits are good. We're looking good. And then somebody'd sit back and ask, has anybody actually talked to the drivers about any of this? And, we realize that we're paper safe. We're really good at that. So it took a while to get over that hurdle and get into the next thing. And now there's just so many tools available, which might create overload anyway. It's about selecting the right tools, and trying to make them meaningful for your company. We all have dash cameras and other instruments that'll help us, right? And for us now, it's just trying to kind of turn that into something meaningful that actually works at the street level. So it's like you're saying, the big paper manual was useless. We ended up getting a smaller one, and we're leveraging videos and training things. You have so much media available to you now, so you can get the information out to people. And people need to hear things 7 times in 7 ways, right? So we're trying to use every little piece of tool because not everybody learns exactly the same way. So it's an interesting time because we have so much available to us.
Just one thing like that as well, just what you was talking about, the multimedia and things like that. Especially if you're a smaller carrier, you don't have the resources. Even like the AMTA, you go on the AMTA website, there's micro learnings, there's stuff there that you can use, whether it's in a toolbox talk, in a safety meeting, or like Jeff was doing yesterday, the spring safety meeting. There's lots of things out there, and also safety is not supposed to be kept in a silo. It's one of those things that we're not supposed to keep secrets. We're supposed to share, and rise all ships on a rising tide kind of thing. So there's lots of options out there for small, medium, large carriers.
Maybe I'll just ask a question before we head to Kyle. I'm just curious around the resources. So there's internal and external resources, but what other resources are there available? There's AMTA, but other things that you might tap into, or some of the data you're collecting, and how do you share that? How do you, maybe Kyle can. Okay, great. Yeah.
I was going to jump in because you guys didn't really touch on it. Everybody's got ELEs nowadays, and there's just a flood of data. So I think one of the best things you can do to get buy-in from a fleet is to, first of all, create KPIs. You need KPIs, so you're measuring, what you're measuring safety-wise. What's important to you? Is it hard braking events? Is it hard cornering? Is it damage claims? Whatever your KPIs are, you have them. But the thing that the drivers really seem to enjoy anyways, is if you can gamify it somehow. And it's not just celebrating, here's our 5 best drivers, because they tend to be the 5 best drivers all year long. But if you can incorporate things like, this is my most improved driver this month, he went from last place to 15th place, and you can get the word out there. We've got, I don't know if it applies to every fleet, but our drivers operate on an app, and we can push news and safety bulletins and things to the drivers via that. So we just try to update them on, we don't want to name and shame people, but it's okay if it's good news. This is our most improved driver of the month. They love that sort of thing. And if you kind of push the narrative where it's not a compliance checkbox like you guys were talking, but it's, we want to be safe because it's a professional standard. And the drivers really want to be professional, and they want to work for a professional fleet. So if you get away from the we're doing pre-trips because it's a checklist item and you're going to get a ticket, to this is what we do to maintain our safe fleet and our safe rankings, the guys, they really tend to buy into that. They like the recognition, and they like the challenge, I guess, of who can improve the most and who's the best guy. I've got 1 million miles with no accidents. Everybody likes to brag about that. So we try to encourage that sort of behavior.
That's great. I think the whole concept of geomatics and all those things have really been a game changer in terms of the in-cab experience. And I think there's like a session tomorrow, I believe, on the in-cab. So it'd be interesting to hear more about that. But yeah, it starts leveling the playing field. It's no longer just I guess it's a quantifiable way of measuring people. So and the performance. So gamifying changes things for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, we just had a funny thing on the meeting on Sunday. There was a long discussion broke out between these guys about how to get from 4 stars to 5 stars on their Samsara on one element of which I wasn't familiar with, but it was quite funny. You could tell they were really invested in it, right? So you have gamified.
Yeah, they want to do a good job.
They do.
Yeah, that's great. All right, we'll move on. What strategies have been most effective in getting drivers genuinely engaged in safety initiatives? So I think we maybe touched on a few of those, but what other things have you found? Tools, techniques, processes? Yeah.
We have incorporated driver mental health and physical health into our health and safety program as well. We have a wellness coach, and he comes up with food. We're long haul primarily, so we have guys that are on the road for 10 to 14 days. It's not uncommon. So he'll come out with on-the-road recipes and stretches you can do in your chair or on the side of your truck. And we do wellness check-ins with the drivers. Things like fatigue management, no-go decisions. If a driver calls up and says, look, like my hours are legal, but I'm just beat, then it's management's job at that point to support that driver with dispatch and with the customer to say that, look, it's unsafe, we can't go. And everybody is dealing with the same safety problems all across all the industries that we're servicing. They understand if it's a safety concern and you say that we can't do it for whatever reason. And the drivers respect that once they realize that, hey, it's not just the load. I'm not just a cog in the wheel that's taking freight from point A to point B, but I'm a human being that they care about and want me to get home every night. You get a lot more buy-in.
I'm curious on the wellness coach. Is there a lot of uptick on that? Like, what does that look like? Are people reaching out? Or?
We have walking challenges. Our fleet gets segregated, and the office staff of all the various terminals, they get segregated into different teams, and we'll do things like, I think we walked to the moon was the last one that we did. However many steps that took, but you get 100 people in a team, and everybody does their steps every week. The drivers they're sending their data in. He does all kinds of neat little things like that. He comes in, he's gone to our warehouse staff, done demonstrations on proper lifting techniques and all kinds of stuff. Does little chair workouts. Tends to show up when we're barbecuing a lot, but.
Suggesting recipes. All right, what else?
One of the things that's had the biggest impact for us is the mentorship program. I know lots of fleets in this room have mentorship programs. I know you guys do. So that's a point I want to make, that you don't actually have to reinvent the wheel. Like, a lot of people have done a lot of great work in this room. There's a lot of knowledge. And if you just pick up the best practice that works for you, there's a lot you can do with it. The mentorship program for us it's created rungs on the ladder. It's given drivers a place to go. I think we were talking about, what do you do with the guy that's seen everything and knows how to do everything? He can be really annoying, or you could actually harness that power and turn him into something that's helpful, right? And so the mentorship program has created this place to go for our drivers and something to aspire to. And then they learn by teaching too, and they become less complacent by teaching, because that's a risk. Senior drivers tend to be more complacent, and as they're reinforcing things to the people that are up and coming, they're making themselves safer at the same time. So everybody wins in that, and that's been an awesome program for us.
Yeah, and I think even just going back to the basics, this day and age, even, we have all these communication tools available to us and everything else. But it's going back to the basics of following up with a driver or an employee who, brought a problem, brought an issue, and even if it's not the answer they want to hear, you follow up with them. You always make sure that you give them feedback down the road, because that gets you so much mileage. If you're one of those leaders who fails to provide that feedback back to drivers or employees, things like that, it can wipe out a lot of good work that you've done within the business. So, and that's one of the key things I always tell to our supervisors, and especially when we're training supervisors and that. And I said that's one of the number one thing is respect and getting back to your people. Like that's really it. That's what keeps workers engaged. If you're not going to do that, the workers won't be engaged.
Great. Anyone want to add to anything to that?
I agree.
Maybe you could talk a little bit more about your mentorship program, or maybe each of you have something really similar, like in terms of how it's structured, or how, is there any, whatever you could share on that. I think it's a really interesting, it's a bit of a green hand. It could even be used as a green hand program or some, new employees. So maybe just whatever you could talk about that.
Yeah, so we've had a mentorship program for as long as I've been at Arrow, which is nearly 20 years. Our mentorship program is actually designed by MTI out of Castlegar. A lot of people in the room know Andy there. And what we because of the size of our units, we're doing a lot of big B train stuff, and often in fairly extreme conditions. We tend to stray away. We don't go with a lot of new drivers. We're not the high milers. But really, our mentor program is it doesn't matter if you've been hauling chips for Whitecourt or vice versa. It starts with the same basic thing. There's obviously a ride along, and then there's usually, if it's a new guy, we have a dedicated trainer, mentor who's been trained through the MTI through the mentorship program, which is actually this weekend in Kamloops, and I'm heading there for that. But then it's a case of, it doesn't matter, there's no fixed time. So if it's a guy who's been driving for Whitecourt, we know they're probably going to have the same mills, same pulp mills, everything else. They're driving pretty much the same equipment, might be a little bit of difference, but we'll know that within 2, 3, 4 days, that guy's good to go. That driver's ready to go. We've had other drivers who have got tons of experience, but maybe haven't done B trains in the environments that we're working in, and it might take a month. It might take a month to train that driver. But then the other thing that we do, each day, there's a feedback loop. So each day, the mentor and the driver meet with the supervisor to kind of go over that day, what they've been doing. But then also at the end of each week, something that we've incorporated recently is we actually have an electronic form that the new driver, he goes onto that form and he tells us how he's feeling. Like he tells us, or she or he tells us, what's going well. Is there anything that any way that they can improve their learning, etc. So that's one of the things that we've taken we've gone to another level with, and it's fairly new in its infancy. We're about 4 months in, but it's working well, and it's allowing a driver to tell us things that we weren't getting from them before. Before everything's good. No, not necessarily. And it's just another avenue. It's easier for somebody to fill a form in than have a direct conversation with a new supervisor. So that's what's working for us.
Can I add something? For us, the mentorship programs kind of created a buddy system. So when a new hire starts on and they get a mentor, and the mentor has some ownership, and we incentivize them, of course, through pay. And there's actually some bonuses that they would get once that new hire's achieved certain levels in their 90 days. So there's an immediate sense of we're in this together between the mentor and the mentee. And then also, it's a little easier for a mentee to reach out to his buddy than maybe his supervisor and ask a question, because he might think it's a stupid question. So I heard a guy at the safety meeting on Sunday say, call me at 2 a.m. I'm a mentor. If I'm your mentor, call me. And that's awesome. It's awesome for the supervisor too, who doesn't have to field all of those calls. So it's really pushed it down a level.
We don't actually have a mentorship program.
Well, now he's got a new idea. That's
Yeah,
great.
I'm going to need one now.
That's great. And so just before we kind of turn it over to questions, and I'm sure there'll be some questions, hopefully, I'm just curious, is there anything you think about safety culture or leadership that we haven't touched on, or you haven't touched on, that you would like to share that's working really well in your organization, or something you're implementing?
I would say learn to love audits. Audits are not the enemy. They are exciting. It's an opportunity to learn your deficiencies, where you can improve. They're not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, safety is not, it's not a standalone function. It's got to be built into everything you do, and as your safety culture improves, that becomes natural. It becomes muscle memory. Even, I'll give an example, a brutally honest example with Arrow. If we hadn't improved our safety, so going back 15 years, we didn't have good WCB rates. We had terrible WCB rates. And if today we hadn't changed the safety culture within Arrow, for the payroll that we have, if we were still paying those same premiums, we'd have to generate over $100 million more revenue a year just to cover the premium. So when people say it's, you know, it can't be together, it can. It has to be together. Everything that you do, there can be a safety compliance feature built into it throughout the company. And like I say, it becomes second nature. There's no thinking about it. It's just the way we do business now. And always be willing to learn, to improve. It's easy at the beginning. Once you get to the end, it's those 1%, marginal gain, marginal gain, marginal gain, every day, 1%. And that just, it makes you a better organization.
Yeah, I read somewhere, someone made a post the other day that I read, and it said that top fleets don't necessarily spend more on safety, they just know how to execute better. And you figure out what it is you're going to invest in your safety program, whether that's specialized equipment or engineered controls or fleet technology that you're going to deploy, but you have to know what you want to get out of it. So start with the goal in mind and then work backwards and find your technology or your thing to implement. So
That's great. All right, so what questions do we have in the audience?
One thing that can improve safety is a camera that looks at fatigue on the driver, but there's resistance. People feel they're being surveilled. How have you squared that circle, or have you?
Great question. Well, that's a tricky one. Nobody likes the driver-facing cameras. We actually disabled them in our fleet. We do not use driver-facing, but again, we have a long-haul fleet, and that is their home, so we don't really want to be looking in there. At the same time, you are losing those insights. I think the biggest way to sell it to the fleet is that the camera's not there to watch them, it's there to exonerate them. Especially if you're operating in the US, there's nuclear verdicts and liabilities are just so crazy that really it's there to cover the driver. So if an accident should happen for whatever reason, we're assuming that our drivers are safe to begin with. We put them through all the training and they're going through the program. So we're assuming that they're operating how we want them to operate. And in that case, it's probably a third party or weather condition or something has caused an accident. So in that case, you'd say this camera's not there to tattle on you. I don't want to see what you're spitting your spits out the window or anything like that. It's there to say that, no, my driver was alert and paying attention and was not the cause of this accident. It's a backup tool for them, not a tattletale.
for us, we have forward-facing cameras and started with that. We have disabled almost all of the internal cameras. We've kind of taken a different approach where you can earn an inward-facing camera. So it's sort of a 2 strikes with the forward-facing camera, and if those incidents seem to indicate maybe a lack of attentiveness, then we'll enable the interior camera for a period of time to just see that they get through that. And that's working for us, and maybe that's a step, maybe ultimately we'll get to all inward-facing cameras, but that's where we're sitting today.
Yeah, we have one fleet that runs the Caterpillar DSS system, And so that's looking at the driver all the time, and that was a really easy discussion because the customer said we had to. So that was really simple. The drivers didn't like it at the time, but over time, and it actually provided us with a lot of insight. It's on our toughest haul, literally, within the company. And the number of, it's very remote where they're working, and the number of micro sleeps we started to pick up that we were not aware of, and so then we turned that around to the employee and said, okay, this is what's happening here, and it allowed them to realize that Big Brother's not out to get them. Big Brother's there to get them home to their family safe, and we do have the luxury. We don't have, we're 90% day cab, so we don't have the privacy concerns that the high milers are concerned about. But it was just the same as when we brought in dash cams 12 years ago. Everyone hated them. Nobody wanted them. Oh, well, everyone's going to quit. And
automatic engines, same thing.
Yeah, and they got used to it, and they realized it exonerates them in most cases. So, yeah, it's not going away.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting because we were actually getting people asking for them now because we get all kinds of crazy people backing into us and saying it's our fault. And they're like, it's not my fault, right? So sometimes it's also getting driven by the fact that it actually helps. It helps them prove that they're a good driver. So I like it's great. We disabled them externally. But if there's cause for needing more intervention or more review, maybe we should, that's a good interesting way of looking at it. All right, what other questions are there out there?
So my question to you is, do you think the drivers are getting better educated before they get to you people, or do you think it's because of your safety program you have in place that's eventually making them better?
That's a tough one for us. We have incredibly high hiring standards at Caneda. We won't even look at a driver without 5 years experience. So we get the good ones, but we like to think that we can improve them further because of the safety program.
Yeah, that's a tough one for us because we're looking at 2 years experience. But I think we do see that the newer drivers, they're not coming to us right from a driving school, so maybe they've already ironed out all, but they do seem to be better equipped than what they used to be. So, but I don't know what's happening between them finishing their MELT program and then 2 years down the road joining Arrow. I don't know what's happening there. But I would say that the 2 year guys do seem to be better drivers than what we used to see when it was a 2 year guy before.
So the reason I ask that is because we own a small trucking company, and thanks, Jeff, for bringing up the small trucking companies, which contribute to this industry. For me, I don't have anybody to check all the boxes. I have to do it. I actually still drive, right? And if I happen to hire a new guy, I actually go on a load, not with him, but in my truck. Do you know something? Do you know how much they learn from just watching what I do? It's incredible, right? It's something that's instilled in them when they say, oh, well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that, right? So the more information, like you said, the more tools you give them, right? And one thing my dad always said 51 years ago when I started this, he said, do your next trip better than the last.
All right, perfect. Okay, what other questions do we have out there?
Yeah, good morning. Dwayne Toftsrud, Tiger Calciums. This isn't so much a question as it is shared learning. A year ago, I was at a contractors conference in Fort St. John, BC, with a few of our clients that we work with, AEC Energy, ConocoPhillips. And one thing that we took away from that, and I've kind of developed it into our safety culture since then, and if anybody has ever heard of it, you can maybe raise your hands to show. Have you ever heard of the acronym STCKY? S-T-C-K-Y. It was a learning that we picked up from there, and I've been slowly introducing it into our safety culture. And the acronym stands for stuff that can kill you. Everybody's, you do, your field hazard assessments, you do everything that you do normally in paperwork, but if you're not in the mindset of looking every day of stuff that can kill you, it can really creep up on you if you look around and see what can actually happen and stuff that can really harm you. I encourage our people to take a 20-20-20 perspective. So every 20 minutes, stop, take a look around you at 20 feet and see what's happening, just to see if you're working safe or if there's any other things that might happen. But sticky has really been a good, safe addition to our corporate culture, and I think it's working for us. So just wanted to add that.
Thanks. And do you guys have anything to add to that? Or?
I think it's really important. I like sticky. I think it's really important to put a little bit of fear into people, not too much, so that you scare them away from the industry. But the problem with driving, and all of us do it every day, is that I didn't have an accident in the last few years, so I must be doing everything right, and we become complacent. And you need things like that, like sticky, to remind you, like, what you're doing is very dangerous, and there's a million things that can get you. And I think you have to find ways to kind of get that out there with some level of impact. A little bit of fear goes a long ways.
All right, well, I think I'm getting the sign that we're at time. So I want to just thank each of you for joining today and sharing your perspectives. And once again, congratulations on the recent company awards on Trucking HR Canada.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. I would once again like to thank Laura, Matt, Kyle, and Jeff for their time at our 88th annual conference. Again, that took place on April 22nd, 2026. For some AMTA news, our Professional Truck Driving Championship takes place May 30th at our Edmonton International Airport location. Volunteer and driver registration remains open until May 22nd, so we hope to see you there. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure you sign up for our May 14th Safety Summit. That's taking place in Medicine Hat at the Medicine Hat Lodge. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change Podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change Podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change Podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.